What we were talking about...
Fucking apparently weddings and property.
Oh, these chairs are so wide, I love it. You know the wedding ones, they're skinny, innit? I'm just like, I'm falling off them.
Give me strength.
Right,
now.
what is the topic, please? What's the topic?
Don't chat to me. You lot fucking decide the topic between yourselves.
We just spoke
You
about
want
it.
to talk
What
about
is it?
Asians and weddings and property.
Right, hello everyone, welcome to the Tesh Talks YouTube channel. I'm here with hard hat developers who are not wearing their hard hats,
I'm
disappointingly.
so sorry because we're just sitting at home.
Well,
Didn't
I
think
think, you
needed
never know when something could fall on your head.
But
right, so welcome to the channel. Please like, share and subscribe. We're going to talk today about representation. Representation in property. What does representation mean?
When you say it in English, we'll understand.
Yeah, they speak English in America as well.
Oh.
Just about.
Oh,
When
okay.
you say it with an English
Worldwide
accent.
podcast.
Yeah.
sorry.
What does-
Shall I start talking like this and then?
What does representation mean? Cool, I can see they were both very prepared for this video.
Wait, I'm
No.
not a bit.
This was not on the question list because I prepared.
Basically, Priya's been beefing me ever since I walked in the door for no reason.
because he cussed my house out.
But
I love your house, what's wrong with you?
oh my goodness.
Okay, Jasmine, you answer the question because I'm a bit unprepared.
So I think representation is...
I think it's quite subjective though, and how you.
I'm pretty sure I was asked to answer the question.
Yeah, you had your chance and you just
Yeah,
babbled.
but then you.
No, please, honestly, you had your chance, honestly. Honestly, by the way.
Do you know what? She's my business partner. She has something good to say. I want to hear what
Okay,
she's
please.
got to say. Go for it.
Go on, round two.
I think it's quite subjective, as in, how, like, what context are you looking at it at? Why can't I speak English now?
I don't know.
And representation in what?
So representation in your chosen
Field.
line of work or field or career.
Yeah.
So we're property investors and
Yeah.
business owners. You know, what does representation mean in property?
I think what the property field used to look like maybe 5-10 years ago is no longer what it is at the moment. So I think it was a bit more of an older kind of generational thing to do. A lot of it was, if you were younger in it, it was more of a legacy thing that you had got into it, or you had kind of help getting into it. I think nowadays it's a bit more, we live in a bit more of an entrepreneurial world. So I think that a lot of people are a lot younger. They are coming, I think even like the ethnic flat families are a bit more open to you being involved in property and being involved in a business. And I think even for like us, we're both girls, we're both young, we're very much not the stereotype on what someone, you wouldn't look at us and think we are the representation of what a property investor developer is. But there should no longer be a stereotype of what you think a property investor looks like or should be, an age and the money and the car they drive. I think the representation of that should change, and it is changing, and I think it's important to start to show people the different kinds of people that are in property, and to inspire younger people of different ethnic backgrounds, of different age groups, to say, if you're 70 years old, get involved. If you're 17 years old, you can get involved. There can be quite low barriers to entry, which I quite like.
And when you started, did you feel that like you were represented? Was there someone who looked like you, sounded like you, or was from where you were in a position you wanted to be at?
I mean, I guess the only female Asian representation of a property investor was my mum.
Big up Auntie G.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't call her auntie, she won't like that. She's definitely not Auntie G, first off. But yeah, she was only bit, and she was very much against the grain because she was educated. She was divorced. She was brown. She was a female. She wasn't really what you would think to go into property. And even then when I came in, it wasn't really a full-time career when I started. It was just kind of a side hustle for her. But when I started, there was no one other than me and my mum that I knew that was like a female and Asian in property. Everyone else, if they were Asian, they were male. Or if they were female, they were white. There was no... And everybody was at middle-aged. No one was like 19 and buying houses. They were all like 30, 40, 50 years old. Do you know what I mean?
When I started, I didn't know anyone.
Yeah.
Other than, as in no Asian females. I come from like a family that has a portfolio in property, but it's always the men. My mum's involved, but not like how my dad, my uncles are, etc. Whereas then I kind of met Jasmine very early on when I started in property, and then that's kind of why I think we gravitated more towards each other, because we understood how lonely it was, and how kind of we were not. I think it's kind of misunderstood maybe.
Yeah.
And like we've sat in meetings and like mastermind sessions, and I've been sitting next to my dad, who I also work with, and someone's actually turned around to me and said, "I'm not asking you, I'm asking him." And it's rude. And why are you asking my dad? My dad had no clue, because I do all the work and he just sits around, to be honest. But you know what I mean? As in, like, I will do the deal analysis, I will find the property,
Yeah.
he will check it all for me.
But people think the opposite.
But people think I'm just the one that sits around, does nothing. Whereas, and then my dad said, "Well, why don't you ask her? Like, why are you asking me?" And then I just kind of got in a strop and was like, I just left the room. I was like, "There's nothing for left if you don't want to talk to me." But the funniest thing is, we actually met the guy a few months, pre-COVID, and he was talking to us, blah blah blah, and I can't give him the time of day. I don't like you. I don't need to speak to you. And he was telling us he's still looking for his deal, still trying to like progress, blah blah blah. And then when we told him about our deal, he looked a bit stunned. And kind of, he was also in the commercial field, like we are, wanting to progress, and it was just a bit much. And then I think for us more so now, especially since we've taken to social media, we found a lot more Asian girls, or kind of very young, like
not even just Asian, like just of like ethnic background, ethnic origin.
But like reaching out to us, asking us for like phone calls, how do you start? What, like, can you give us some advice? They also, some of them are kind of, I would say, have a bit of a hindrance in the fact that their parents aren't also supportive of them, which is sometimes a great issue. Whereas we never really had that with our parents. So, but we can relate to it. We can understand it.
We have it within our families, just not our immediate. So we have, I don't know what you want to call them, the naysayers, haters, or people just don't understand that you're challenging or changing what their view of certain things is. So you're sometimes always going to come up against a battle with some people, because they're just never going to understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, because you don't fit a mould that they originally thought you should be in. Do you know what I mean? I
think it will change a lot more in the next 5 to 10 years.
I hope so.
But I think it's not where it should be.
Oh yeah.
Right now. And I think as well, social media really is going to be at the forefront of making the change.
Yeah.
Because it's actually, like for example, we didn't have a social media presence until this year. Yeah. And like we've known you now for like a year and a half, I'd say. Before that, you didn't really know what we were doing. You didn't really, you just knew we were in property. Yeah, we used to meet at networking events, have a quick chat, and kind of go off our separate ways. And it was a lot of the same for us, for a lot of other people. And then when we actually took pen to paper, or computer, whatever you want to call it,
fingers to Instagram.
We actually figured we actually have a lot of knowledge between the two of us, and it's kind of now, I think the main purpose of our Instagram is to kind of help and kind of add value and knowledge. Yeah.
And so obviously it makes it harder having this problem of representation, not just in property, but in the world, right? In every level of society. So, do you think that like we as humans have a responsibility to use things like social media to show the world, hey, look, we're similar, I'm doing it, so you can do it? Do you think we all have that responsibility?
Yes, and I don't think it's almost so much that if I'm doing something and you can also do it. Sometimes it's just to change like a view. Do you know what I mean? So say if someone's sitting at home and like they want to do something, it might not even be in property. Say if there's, I don't know, a girl of 19, 20 who wants to start her own business, online business for whatever it is, at least she has some sort of understanding that we also went out on a limb, or we also kind of started something that maybe wasn't the right, like wasn't supposed to be what we were supposed to do. So I don't think it's necessarily about starting in property, but if you want to be going against the grain, or you want to start a business and you don't have the support or within your own network or whom you know, I think it's important to challenge other people's opinions and views, even if it's because they don't agree with it, doesn't mean that they're right.
I think it's just an application process for in any business, isn't it? It's similar to kind of what we've done, similar to kind of what you do. And I think that in itself, like I remember we spoke to this girl, I think she was just out of uni, and she really kind of wanted to start a business on the side. She was a psychologist, one of the two. Not that they're the same thing, but she was one of the two. Really well educated, but she had so much drive. But she was so concerned with the fact that she was Asian.
Yeah.
And the kind of the connotations that come across with that, and her fear was so great. Not like she probably had the capabilities to do so, but her fear and her thought process and her mind was just so worried and conscious of how she would be perceived.
Yeah.
And for us, that was like, we were like, okay, that was kind of quite eye-opening, and one of the reasons that we actually have started to coach people now.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think, you know what, when I got into property, I expected it to be kind of middle-aged men just smoking cigars and just talking about houses and ASTs and all that stuff. And then maybe it's the places we choose to hang out.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at like networking events that we've both been to, I would say it's nice to see, and you definitely see a lot more younger people from more diverse backgrounds. I think there's definitely not an equal gender split, but for me personally, it's more than I thought there would be. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I don't know. But I think it's quite nice to see, and of course you've been in property way longer than me, to see some change and to see actually something is happening slowly.
But I do think as well with how you're saying the change of the young people, and I'm not being like rude here, that's only at your network meet.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Only. Because we went to quite a few before lockdown.
Yeah.
We were trying to do 2 a week before lockdown.
It's very pro-London. London's very diverse. If you start to go to networking events out of London, I think you'll see...
It's the whole,
actually, I've seen that.
When we went to Surrey, I think it was in January, we were the only 2 Asians in the room, let alone men or women. Only 2 Asians.
I think we were the only ones below 30.
Yeah, and there was one other lady.
And she was with her husband.
With her husband.
I think when you start to look at, if you start to look at like, for instance, there's quite a few property magazines who are running them, who is being featured in them, you know, as a kind of general rule of thumb. If you go into property awards, who is winning them, who is being nominated for them, the sorts of people I still think are, although there might be a big there might be a big community that attend certain events or are in London or are wanting to get involved, the ones that are actually making the leap forward and doing something and actually kind of being recognised for doing something. Even when you go to the property training companies, how many of them are young owned? How many of them are ethnic owned? How many of them are ethnic or young person? How many are female run? You know, that there are all these questions. Like, it's not about age, it's not about gender, it's not about you know, like what about your background is. It's just not. It's the stereotype is still of one specific kind of type of person that you think, and they are the people that are running it, and their mindset is kind of quite similar. And I think it's not that it's wrong, and it's not that actually these people might be the best people to be running these companies. However, there are others out there, young, old, black, white, Asian, female, male, whatever. There are other sorts of people, and I think it's just kind of time to showcase that we also do